So now we're getting into more of the actual doing of things. So your project. So I think, if we look at like a typical AEM lifecycle, we've got, 6.1 was released a couple weeks ago, May 2015. And then, like for the church, your go live may be April 2016. Well, what happens between then and, April? And that's basically service packs, hotfixes, and archetypes. So I wanted to focus on archetypes because service packs are pretty self-explanatory, hotfixes are self-explanatory, Oak is totally broken, we know they're trying to fix it. So the Maven archetype is really just a project template. So if you're not familiar, it's just Maven is a build automator, and you can do front-end automation, you can do back-end automation if you're not familiar with Maven. There's a competing product called Gradle, which is not quite as, what do I call it? Not robust, but there is another competing product, or maybe not competing, but there is another product called Gradle. I know Time Warner Cable uses Gradle for all of their builds. They have tons of problems with Maven. I've personally never had a problem with it. On our continuous integration server, it just runs. We have it building out everything for us. So the question you may be asking yourself is really, why do you care? You guys at Access 41, it's like, well, we already have our projects, or maybe the church, you guys have your projects. Why do I care about a new archetype? I can't build with a new template. I'm not going to, just build a new project and then pull everything in. Well, with the new archetype, it's really Adobe telegraphing its best practices. So you can sort of view it as, here Adobe is, they're learning just like we are. They're implementing, they released Adobe.com on 6.1 a couple weeks before 6.1 was released publicly. So they're dog fooding that stuff. And so they are telegraphing, they're saying, okay, you should start using, Sling Models. You can really make your life easier. You can use Sightly now. So what comes with the new Archetype 10? Localized content. So it's all lorem ipsum, but it is technically localized. You've got Sling Models. Again, I'm a huge fan of Sling Models. It has made my life so much easier, especially before I knew anything. I guess, to be fair, I haven't even been on AEM for a year, so my entire world is about Sling Models. You get unit tests, so you don't have to test in production anymore. Everything in the new archetype is Sightly, 100%. So, again, that's Adobe saying, JSP sucks. Is that right? Sure. I guess you can just preface it with, my opinions are my own. Yeah. I'll say that. So, they've got a couple templates, which is kind of interesting because have you guys looked at the WCM Foundation Sightly components? There's like 5 of them. It's kind of funny. It goes back to like the core components that we did. But there's one page, and it's like, is this really the best way you want to do this? So yeah, there's templates. There's components, obviously, which some of them are just glorified, content XML, super types of the WCM stuff. There's servlets. So one of my, when I was getting up to speed on AEM, I was like, how do I post? How do I do a post? How do I do a get? Well, there's servlets in the new archetype that say, here's how you do that. Here's your request. Here's your response. And then schedulers. So, so with Archetype 10, with 6.0, you can use it directly. Okay. So what's great is, so we're on Archetype, I think 8. I think that's what we use to build our project. And so we may not create a brand new project with Archetype 10, but we can use a lot of those principles. So we can sort of say, oh, look, that's a really good idea. We're gonna borrow that idea for the next time we need to create a page template. You know, maybe there's some organization here that we like. Oh, client lives in the component. That's really cool. I can just automatically import my AngularJS. Something along those lines. With 5.6.1, you can use the concepts. You cannot build directly on top of 5.6.1. So, do you guys have a lot of projects on 5.6.1? Hopefully everyone's getting away from that. The good news for 5.6.1 people is that I think last week Adobe announced that 1.1 was available. So if you're not familiar, Sightly 1.1 is all of the Sightly features from 6.1. Okay, so you may be hearing me talk up here, and you know I'm just saying Sightly is the new hotness, and you're like, well, I'm on 5.6.1, I can't really do anything about that. Well, 1.1 is on. You can run it on 5.6.1. You can even run Sling Models on 5.6.1. Has anyone done any like bare Sling development? Anyone besides me?
Just toy, nothing serious.
Okay. So what's great about Sling, or what's great about Sightly, is that they released it, Adobe released it to the Apache Foundation, so you can run Sightly on top of Sling. So all that knowledge you get from learning Sightly, from learning AEM, you can use about 80% of it on top of Sling, which is really cool. Part of the reason why I fell in love with it. So before I get into sort of the dev tools, I just wanted to say a couple of acknowledgments to Gabriel Walt and Fika Visser. Did anybody go to Summit? Did you guys attend any of their sessions? Okay. So a lot of this will be, really, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here. They've really helped the onboarding process to AEM. In fact, I would go as far as saying it wasn't until January where I was like, AEM is actually a good product. And I think a lot of that is the result of their tireless efforts. And when I mean tireless, I mean FICA will like send me a tweet saying, here's how you can do this, Chris. And it's like not even the right time zone. Plus the many other people that I don't interact with that much, you know, Nate from the Acrobat team who was here last month. All of those guys are totally making the development world of AEM less like CQ and more like something better. Or you don't have to, you know, do these, you know, archaic build processes. All right, so let's build something. So, oh, the other thing, so if you guys did attend Summit and that developer toolbox session where they go through the Eclipse tools, brackets, all of that, what's great is because I don't work for Adobe, I can go off that script a bit, so you'll see some things that, a lot of it will be very similar, but I want to show you that you can go beyond that. There might be a few little bumps here and there, but I think there's some cool stuff that you may not know about. All right, so we're just going to go to our meetup folder. We've got this AEM, and so we're going to do everything on 6.1. So a couple things that I like to do to make my life easier. Normally I run a VM, but for this demo, there's a problem right now with the syncing of the Eclipse plugin, so I'm just going to run a local host. So forgive me for not having the entire stack right now. So I'm just going to open up AEM in debug mode, and it's just a double click. While that's building, and again, I wanted to start from the bare, like from nothing, so you guys don't have to say, well, what did he do before then? So while we're doing that, I'm going to look up AEM Developer tools. And you guys can peace out if you want. Or a pizza.
Which one's Dan?
That one. So something, with the Eclipse tools, with the AEM Developer tools, I just did a Google search or a DuckDuckGo search of AEM Developer tools. You can find it in the Eclipse Marketplace. Don't do that. You don't get the latest and greatest. So do a Google search, install it manually. I'm just going to copy this installation link so you guys can see this entire process. Copy link address. We're going to launch Eclipse. You'll see that I already have it installed. And even though I'm running 6.1 from the command line in a shell script, a browser will still pop up and tell me that it's ready to go. So it's installing that entire jar. It's unpacking everything right now. I am doing sample content for the purpose of this demo. In fact, I could probably show, well, we'll do this. So I'm just going to paste in here, install new software, and then it'll tell me, here's AEM. Like I said, don't use the marketplace to install. You will get an old version, or you will potentially get an old version. All right, so what was the other thing? With the AEM plugin, you do get a perspective, an AEM perspective. We'll close this here so we can see that. We don't really need to use the console. So I'm going to attempt to do this entire demo without touching a terminal. I think it's for an onboarding perspective, and because I deal with a lot of front-end developers that aren't necessarily terminal junkies, I think it's really important to try and help that out. So here's my local host running at 4502. Have you guys all played with 6.1? Everyone? Hopefully? Kind of talk about a few things. It's orange now. And then they push analytics and targeting on you. You can just say, don't ask again. We're going to go to sites, and we can see that we're just at a bare, we've got nothing. Or we've got, geometric. We always had column view in 6.0, but we did not have arrow keys. So you can actually navigate with arrow keys on your tablet. Why would you do that? No, but they really screwed up the naming. They shouldn't have called it Touch UI. They should have called it Not Ugly UI. So now that we're, and just in case you're wondering, yes, the welcome screen is still here. So you still have the green bonnet look throughout when you need it. All right, so now that that's set up, we can build our project. Or let's create a new project. We're going to go to AEM. If you don't see this folder, you can do show all wizards. We'll say multi-module project. So the multi-module project, if you're not familiar, is a series of projects. It's several POMs nested inside of each other. You can turn them off as needed from the main POM. Does anyone know what POM stands for? Yep. I had treats.
Wait, who answered that?
I owe you candy. And I have it here, I just didn't bring it. All right. Oh. What's that?
Very convenient.
Yeah.
Be a bathroom break, right?
Yeah.
I can do a backflip.
We could, do you guys want to pause for a bathroom break, or are you guys good? So. I'm all right. All right, so the AEM plugin will go out and look for new archetypes for you. So it's not just you have to have a new version to get the new archetype. There's a very specific, in fact, let's look at my gist. Probably, nope, right here. It will actually, if it pulls up, it actually goes to repo, and actually it will pull that down. So if there's a version 11, you will get it. This is if there's a gist out there in the world for doing it via the Maven way. So we're just gonna call this, so with this project, my lovely wife and I, we are talking about starting a pug ranch. So we're gonna build a website for our pug ranch. So we're gonna use the archetype because a no-funded pug ranch can totally afford AEM. So we say org, or, and pug ranch. Okay. So the first text field, human friendly, human readable. Group ID is, essentially your website backwards. Artifact ID is your project name, lowercase. Server name, I always do a friendly name, so I always say local author. So if I need to, let's say I'm working on, so our dam is really not very authorable because of all the customizations that we went into making it responsive in the time frame. So there, our dam is sort of like set in stone, and it's like, you don't need to author this. Your tags are there, the search is there, query builder's there. Don't go try and move things around. So I always do multiple servers. For us, we're just going to do local author, local host, of course. So as I was saying, if there seems to be a bug with the newest plugin and running VMs, you still get brackets syncing if you're running a VM, but there's some weird errors that you get with Eclipse. Adobe is very aware of this. I've been in contact with them, so hopefully something will come of it. So we'll say 4502, admin, 10123. And the debug port is kind of the magic secret sauce that we're going to focus on for the first couple minutes. Something to note, if you screw any of these up, if you screw up typing one of these, let's say debug port, I'm trying to get fast and I'm going to type admin, and all of a sudden I typed admin in the debug port, Eclipse will continue to make your project for you, even though it failed and it didn't like your debug port. So just verify, re-verify, because what happens is you go to create it, it says your debug port is not an integer, and you say, okay, I'm going to fix that, and then you hit finish again and it says, well, I already created your project, you have to rename it. It's like, well, I can't do that. So make sure all of these, there are some things, again, because I don't work for Adobe, I can tell you, these tools are brittle. These tools are very brittle, and we may see some of that.
If you want to work for Adobe, though, maybe you shouldn't say that.
I guess I'll be stuck at Sandwich forever. So it will go through and it will create. So this takes a little bit. Eclipse looks like it's hanging. You don't need to force quit it. It is, in fact, working. It still has the OS, or the Mac OS 9 little spinner, which is a nice touch. It doesn't have Retina icon. What are the other things that I love about Eclipse while we're waiting for it? So it'll get done creating our project. So this is actually writing out, a ton of stuff. This is writing content. This is writing your UI apps package. This is writing your core, Sling Models, everything.
Just that right there, I'll put it over there.
My car is running, sorry. Put it in that trash.
Oh. And
I have a question while you're waiting. Little clown.
yeah.
You mentioned that you guys are using Akamai.
Uh-huh.
Are you doing active purging of Akamai when you activate pages? Did you guys write a custom workflow step to do that? Is that something you guys can do open source maybe?
I don't know. That's a good question. Have you looked at the Akamai? There's a bundle actually now that ties into the Akamai SOAP service.
Okay. I haven't seen that one.
Okay, so that's there. We did write it custom. In fact, the guy that wrote it, I was like, did you pull this from over here? And he's like, no, I just wrote it custom. Yeah, so it's funny. There's myself and another developer that's in Milpitas that we recently hired. He has a lot more AEM experience. And then we have the two guys in India, and those are the four that make up our team. All right, so it built, and we can see that that everything is synchronized, everyone is happy, or at least according to Eclipse, and Eclipse never lies. So we can see that our local author has started. Now that doesn't mean that it started up the instance for me, it just means that it's running and working as expected. So we can see that we don't have that site here, but if we refresh, we can see that we have our Pug Ranch site. And if we click on it,
One step closer to my dream.
yeah. So we have our English page, and we'll just open it. Everything that we're doing today is going to be in touch, if I didn't already say that. So we'll just hit next, 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 next. What's that?
They don't have a skip button anymore?
They do, but doesn't it show up again? So this is really, so for me, when I've gone through this demo a couple of times, what I'm looking for is this piece right here, this hello world model says, and then it actually says something correct. Okay, so this is telling me this instance is C1111. Okay, so I know that everything got deployed correctly. I know my Sling model is working. Things are looking pretty good. Okay, so what we can do with that, we've got a couple options. And so with this plugin, we set up our author to run on 10123. So we can actually start, we can, instead of tying into 4502, we can switch over to 10123. There's this little bug right here, so it tells us connected server in debug mode. If you don't see that Sling model, you will not be able to do this because it's not, your model's not working correctly. I've seen that from time to time. So look for that ID is important. So it's restarting the connection to local author. And now it's telling me I'm debugging, I'm synchronized, awesome. So let's go in here and let's look at it. So we'll just go into source main, models, hello world model. Just open this up. And we'll set a breakpoint. I'm just going to put a breakpoint in at 42, double click, right in the gutter. I'm going to switch back over and I'm going to refresh the page. And with any luck, Eclipse knows that I'm trying to debug and it says, hey, I hit your breakpoint. It's asking me if I want to switch to the crappy debug perspective. We don't want to do that. So we'll say, no, we don't want to do that. It'll still give us our stack trace and everything. So what we can do here is we can get, information. So I know that, these values are coming in. Maybe I want to see what my settings are. I can hover over these and I can get, my value maps and everything. So you get, me coming from the PHP world, I'm like, hey, this is like .NET. So totally in love with the debug mode because when I break something, I can figure out why it's broken. With the exception of a few places like getters and setters. Okay, so that debug mode is there. Use it. Then you don't have to do a bunch of logger, tail F, this, all of that crap. You can just debug and be done with it. So that's great. So that's really just to show you that debug works. If you try to do hot swap of code, that is something that is not quite supported yet. So if we were to try to change something mid, so if we were to add something to message, plus equals message 2, Eclipse will throw an error for us. It says, this Java VM cannot do this. So we'll just hit continue. So you can't do hot swapping yet. I don't know if that's coming, but so what we're going to do is we'll just continue on. We can just continue through this breakpoint. The page loads. If you wait long enough, Chrome or Safari or Edge, whatever your browser is of choice, it will finally give up and say, okay, I've reached my timeout. So there is a little bit of a time limit on that. All right, so now that that's there, let's go back. So if I start trying to change code, we're connected in debug mode. The syncing just doesn't really work as well in debug mode. Again, if I was to add another message here, message plus equals message 3, hit save. Oh, hey, I broke something. So again, it's telling me that it can't save it. Okay. So if I want to do any sort, even though I'm not in a breakpoint, it's still saying, hey, I don't like you changing code when you're in debug mode. So we'll switch over. So that's something, again, that's not covered in the Adobe Blessed presentation. So if I do message 4 now, this equals message 4, you'll see that it's publishing and it doesn't error on us. So that's something to keep in mind if you're debugging. Okay. If we refresh the page, we'll see that all of those pieces came in. Message 2, message 3, message 4. Okay. So what's great about this is that I'm not having to, Maven clean install, auto install package. I'm not having to go through that process over and over and over again. I'm sure we've all been through that, right? We're like, Maven clean install, Maven clean install. Gets annoying after a while. So that's cool. Now let's take a look at some features for Sling Models. So with Sling Models, we don't have to do, get resource, resource manager. I mean, can do all of that stuff. But we can inject properties directly on our model without having to do a whole lot of work. So if I look here and I go private string, we'll just call this title. And we'll inject inject. That's really the special piece that we're doing. And we're going, so that's our setter, and then we're going to do our getter, public string get title. And we'll just say return title. Okay. So we're injecting a property that should be on our resource for this model, and called title, and we will return it. So everything's going to be great, right? Uh-oh, it's broken. Okay? So everything failed. That entire class failed. And the reason why, well, there's a couple reasons why. A, there's no title, so that's a problem. We haven't created anywhere to put it. Maybe we could go put it in CRXDE, but you can't really tell your authors to go model around in CRXDE Lite. So in order for this not to break, we have another piece of syntax that we can write, and we will just say optional. Okay, so this is telling our model that this is optional. We don't have to have this. So if you're working with some kind of unstructured data, maybe there's going to be a title there, maybe there's not. Remember that. So because we're in the Java nature, we can import. And Eclipse is happy. If we refresh, we'll see that that's working. Okay. So that's sort of some basics of, that's like extreme basics of Sling Models, but you can see how that's much easier than, get properties, here's this type, here's this, all that stuff is gone. You don't have to do that. Okay. So that is in core, okay? So something, I know Adobe says that you can put your Java classes right into your component. I would discourage from doing that. It seems like Sling, at least with the older archetypes, like I haven't verified with this one, but the older archetypes had problems doing auto-completions and really trying to figure out, your imports and all of that. So I would strongly recommend putting them, like if you have Java classes, don't put them in the component folder, put them in core. Have you guys seen that too? Yeah. It's really nice. It's like you think about it. It's like this is great. I can just move this component into this new project, and it's great. But yeah, all that stuff. So let's go into UI app. So our model now is not expecting, but it can handle this property called title. So we can go into JCR root, apps. And another thing with the AEM component, or the AEM plugin for Eclipse, is you can get properties, you can get JCR properties on all of your, anything really, even if it's a content bundle. So this automatically comes with a content bundle, so I can get properties if I know the right place to look. So if you see this sort of NT folder, you know, hidden away, you're looking in the right spot. If you go directly into source, you will not see those properties. So that's something to keep in mind as you're working with the AEM plugin. So let's go back into UI apps. We'll go into content. Here's all of our components. This is a Hello World component that we're looking at. And this is great. We can close that debug window. So we have our hello message. So let's do underneath our pre-tag, let's just do a little H1, and then something to keep in mind, if you're writing Sightly, Eclipse doesn't have auto-completion for Sightly. So we're just going to say, for now, we're just going to say properties dot title. Okay. So have you guys written a lot of Sightly? Okay. So you can get your properties direct, so that would be just properties dot whatever. So we're going to save this. Again, we wouldn't see anything, so we'll put this in the dialog. So in CQ dialog, we'll go into content, our source. Just going to do, again, something super, super simple. Change this to title. And our property name is just going to be title. Save. We'll see that it published out. We'll refresh. Okay. So if we click on this and we get this, we can see that we have a new, in our EQ dialog, we have a new text area, or not text area, text field. So I can say, welcome to the ranch. Boom, there it is. Okay. So that's all great, but we're not using our model at all. Maybe we want to reverse that text. Maybe we want to, I don't know, maybe we want to do something to it. Maybe we want to make it all caps. Maybe, you know, maybe your wife is going to be updating this page and she doesn't know how to do all caps in CSS, so we're going to do it for her in the editor.
You can Google it.
That way she's always on brand, okay? You guys have to hear that a lot in Access 41, so I figure I should try and fix that. So in our hello world, we can actually say, so here's our class, and we're assigning it to a property. So we're just saying data use. We're using the Java use API, and that class has a property. So if we wanted to use the hello world where we're getting all the goodness of the models and everything, we'll just say hello.title, and we'll hit refresh. Okay, and nothing changed. Well, let's make this all uppercase. Okay, again, sorry for the basic. We'll just say to uppercase. We'll just hit save. Boom. And boom, it's all uppercase. Okay. So that's cool. We just did a simple inject, and then we threw it through the class, so we can really do anything we want against that. Another feature of Sightly, again, if you guys haven't used much of it, is you can set contexts. So one of the main features of Sightly is cross-site scripting prevention. So again, let's go back to the whole wife model, and let's say your wife is super talented and she knows HTML, and she's like, oh, I want this to be, and maybe she's into SEO. She's like, I need this to be an H1 tag. So she's like, I know how to get an H1, I'll just put it right there. Well, oops. Well, how do I get it to be an H1? Well, I'm glad you guys asked. So what we can do is we can remove this H1, and we can actually set a context. So Sightly knows I'm going to be accepting HTML. Okay. So context equals, let's do single quotes, knows to display that as an H1. Okay. So yeah, that's sort of and what's cool is, so 6.0 didn't support, there's a couple that it didn't support JSON, I don't think. So if you're writing out JSON, let's say you're doing some Angular stuff, you couldn't, like if you created a view in Sightly, I do this a lot, so what I'll have, you know, rather than creating a servlet and like output all this JSON through the servlet, I'll create a JSON view using Sightly, and or XML. So like let's say you're building an RSS feed. Prior to 6.1, you couldn't do JSON. I don't think you could do XML, so you were having to do context unsafe. And unsafe basically means you're on your own. We're gonna give you your stuff. So there's no cross-site scripting stuff. So when in doubt, like, you know, or if you're having problems and you don't know necessarily the context doesn't fit, you can use unsafe. Another piece with that is, have you guys tried to output dates directly in Sightly? You can't do it at all. You have to run through a Java class. I don't think they fixed that in 1.1. And that's a cross-site scripting thing. So they really want you to sanitize that data. So they want you to pull in the date, you know, use, what is it, string utils and all of that to make a date. In fact, FICA has a really good post on that. So you can't just say like JCR : created. It won't give you that, even if it exists. In fact, let's do this. And let's just go to CRX. Are you guys are all using the plugin from Nate, right? Okay. I started helping him do some design work with it. So we'll go to CRX. We can look at this content. So we have, here's our JCR title. Oh, that's not on our model. Let's look at our title. Par. Service component. Hello world. Here's our title. So you can see JCR last modified. So here's our, so you would think that we could just say properties JCR. In fact, let's try it. So you say properties dot JCR : last modified. Save, and you'll see that it used to not work. Yeah, so it won't spit out that. So that's something to keep in mind. I was like racking my brain, and you know, there's not a lot of Stack Overflow information on Sightly, so I was like, why can't I just, even doing, you know, at context equals unsafe. Still nothing. So dates are kind of weird. So that's one caveat. I think it's like strings, ints, longs. There's a spec somewhere. All right, so that's cool. Let's see here. Now, what do we want to talk about next? All right, so that's Eclipse, right? So you can write Sightly, but you know, it doesn't give us that auto-completion or anything, which is kind of a bummer. So what we can use is brackets for auto-completion. So let's fire up brackets. Let's open up. We're already there. So something Adobe recommends is that when you're using brackets, open up JCR root. For this particular demo, I'm going to be opening up content, which is one above JCR root. Hopefully, there we go. Because we have to adjust some filters for Vault for our syncing engine. So we're going to look at our project settings. We don't have any, so we'll just say http://localhost. Something to keep in mind is that if you're working on Sling project and you don't necessarily want to sync, brackets will try and sync, even if you don't have a setting in there. And it can be a little tiresome. All right, so we'll go to JCR root, apps, and it's nice because like if you're telling a front-end dev, they don't have to like look at all of that, you know, UI apps, core, what is all this stuff? It's just like apps and etc. That's all you need to care about. So that's why, I think that's part of the reason why Adobe says use JCR root as the root. So we'll look at Pug Ranch, components, content, hello world, hello world.html. Here's our stuff. And we should have properties dot, okay, maybe not. Again, like I was saying, some of these things are a little on the brittle side. Let's go to structure, let's go to page. What is it, current page, I think? Let's go to partials, main. So this is actually a good one. You know, if you guys have taken a look at how Adobe has constructed page in WCM components, this is one of those, like if you look at the page that's in this archetype, it's a lot better organized than what you would see right in CRX. It's funny, I'm always going back to this to say like, okay, how did they do this? Why did they do this? There's definitely some weird things in here, but it is a really good starting point. So here we have current page.template name, and we're looking at main, so we can do something similar. So I think hopefully we get completion current page dot. Oh, so apparently auto completion is not working for me, which is not fun. Oh, there we go. Not modified by. I guess you have to close your curly bracket to get that. So that's something new. So you do get some slightly auto-completion. There can be some weird things with how the regex that they're doing to give you syntax highlighting. In fact, if you were to scroll through some of this stuff, you'd see some of the weirdness. Where sometimes it's white, sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's green. But again, if you're looking, it kind of gives you that little extra edge to work with slightly. And really the AEM plugin. Oh yeah, so I should say by default brackets doesn't come with the AEM plugin. You need to install it. So I want to turn our attention to client lids, and this is where I need. Nice settings. All right. So a new feature of Sightly 1.1, and it comes with 6.1. Again, it's a feature pack for 6.0. Is data fly repeat. Before, when you wanted to get child nodes and get properties on those child nodes, you'd have to go into a Java class, get children, get properties on those children, create a value map, all that stuff. Well, data fly repeat lets you just get the children node. Lets you iterate through those, and then you can get titles, so you can actually see that list up there. So you could actually do this, but that's because there's page functions in AEM. So let's look at our main. Let's go into our templates, and we will go to structure, page, partials, and then go into main. And then in our footer, let's say we wanted to create a list of all of our child pages. We need to create a, just a simple footer menu. So we've got data fly repeat, current page, dot list children. That's just a method that you can call. You get that stuff, again, for free. If you were to do this, and this is one of those 20% cases where you can do this in AEM, you can't do it in Sling. So list children is just a method on current page. So we can iterate through those. So we have item.title. And we don't have any children pages, so we're going to create some so we can see this. So we'll go in sites, and we're in English, and we were in English. We'll create a page. Say content, next. Name, page 1, page 1. Create, done. And create another page, next, page 2, page 2, create, done. So there's page 1 and page 2. Okay. So you can iterate on those and you can, get those properties. And those will work for any type of node where before you couldn't really do that. You had to go do that in the Java class, which was kind of painful. Okay, so the next thing is styling. So as I said, actually, let's back up. So a feature of 6.1 is SVG support. You can now drop in an SVG. So let's take a look at that. So we will go into our site, we'll go to Assets, and we'll go into our Plugin site, and we have some assets here, so let's just add one. So let's just hide all that, folder, let's go to our meetup. I have the asset here that I want to use. We'll go into image, and we have this Pug logo, and we'll just drop in here. Okay. And so, you guys have seen this before, sometimes that workflow doesn't run to create your PNG if you're using something. So before this would just break. If you weren't using ImageMagick to process that SVG, you wouldn't get a preview. And so now you actually get a preview of an SVG. So that's cool. So that's an improvement on 6.1. So that's great. Let's use that in our page now. So we can say Pug. There it is. Tells us it's new. Just because we'll drop in an image, and then we'll go back to our assets and we'll drop this in onto our image. Great, right? Well, if you look closely, so SVG support, yay! Not really. If you inspect this, you'll see that it just dropped a JPEG for you. Thank you for that SVG. So that's something to keep in mind, as you hear these new features for 6.1, just kind of be careful. Luckily, this incredibly handsome person made an SVG Sitely component that he open sourced. And if you just do a search for SVG Sitely, it should be the top result. Oh, here it is. So we'll just download this and see how it works. Better work. Show in Finder. Drop this over here. And you were still around. So we'll just call this SVG, because that's what our component is. And then let's go find our project. So let's go into Meetup, Pug Ranch, UI Apps, Source, Main, Content, JCR Roots, Apps. Just love double clicking. Here's all of our components, content. All right, so here's all of our components. And we'll drop that in, and it just works, right? So something to keep in mind is that Brackets only automatically syncs HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and text files, and sometimes .content XML. I've seen it work reliably with CSS and JavaScript. So luckily we have Eclipse that can do some of the heavy lifting for us. We still have it open, it's still synchronized. I'm going to hit refresh on this content folder. And Eclipse doesn't know that it needs to push that. It doesn't know that it's new. You don't see the little spinner in the bottom right-hand corner. So what we can do is we actually have this feature where we can export individual packages to the server. So we're just going to export this folder to the server. Exporting the package. All right. So it didn't error out or anything. So it's now, if we hit refresh, we should see that pop up, right? Well, it turns out that this idiot of a component designer, he did not know to put it in my component. I'll tell you what. He did not know to put it in my Pug Ranch components button or component group. So this is another new feature of 6.1. You can finally get into design mode. So you no longer have to go into classic UI to tell it what component groups to use. So that sounds great, right? Is everyone excited about that? What?
Does that actually work?
Yes, sort of. Well, There's always a caveat. And we'll find out what that is. So it's not a true touch UI. But it's cool that it's there, right? This is another step, like Adobe's really trying to march down that, let's get everyone into touch UI. So we will look for our component group. This, again, handsome, stupid developer decided to put it in AEM components. And so with any luck, we will go back into our edit mode, we'll pull out our sidebar, and we should see that component there. So there it is, AEM components, we have an SVG. Well, we don't want this stupid image-based one that they tricked us with. So let's drop in the real SVG component. Okay, and this SVG component, we can actually take a look at this. There's a bunch of features that this is using. So another new feature of 1.1 is you have Sly, which is a HTML tag. Eclipse will get mad at you and say, I don't understand what Sly means. You can turn that off in preferences or do some other creative things. But essentially what Sly means is don't output this. Only use this to do a little bit of sightly logic. And sightly really doesn't have that much logic to begin with, and purposefully so. We're saying, get the link URL, stuff it into, so data slide test, stuff it into link URL as a local variable. If we don't have that, unwrap the A tag. So that way we don't have to wrap the closing or the opening and closing in different Sly attributes or tags. We, again, test. So if we have that link, we put the SVG class and ID on the A tag itself. Again, if an author they're not thinking like, oh, what if you gave them an A tag and then they couldn't style that A tag because the class is against the image. So if it finds the A tag, it puts the classes on there. And then if we don't have that link URL, then put the classes immediately on. So this SVG component, if we look at it, pretty basic. It's just SVG file, so go find the file. SVG inline, so if you want to do inline SVG, let's say you want to do some animations and stuff. I don't know how much do you guys use SVG? A lot, hopefully. So we use a ton of SVG at SanDisk, and then of course link to, so if we wanted to link to a page, so I don't know, we'll link to geometrics, of course. So we'll link to that, and then just hit OK. And so this gives us all the niceties that we would expect of drop targets and everything, and if we drop this in, boom, there's our SVG. Now the real test is to find out if it works. So we will go into our true WCM mode disabled, and we will inspect this, and we have SVG. So we get a real SVG. Okay. And then there's the A tag that's wrapped around it that we linked to. So those are some features of 6.1, at least some basic features. You sort of have to figure out, as you work more with this, you sort of say, okay, Brackets is really good at this, Eclipse is really good at this. But, there may be a third option, okay? And so that third option is using Brackets as a sync engine, just using it as a doubled sync engine. So this is another one of those things where I go off the rails from Adobe's script. But the AEM plugin for Brackets is really just a node module that runs. It just looks at the file system and then it says, hey, I need to build a package and send it over, send it over, send it over. So, which is great. So if you go back to our conversation about SanDisk in the front end, we're using Gulp. So I'm going to show you guys how you can use these, sort of, maybe not bleeding edge, but newer build systems for front end and use Brackets as sort of just a dumb pipe. Maybe you don't like Brackets, maybe it's slow for you, maybe it crashes all the time, maybe syntax highlighting isn't that good. I don't know, whatever your problems with Brackets is. But the sync engine is phenomenal, right? So what we can do, we will go into filter XML, and we're gonna set up a few things. So we'll just copy this, and we'll paste this in. So brackets, it supports VLT ignore, and it also supports filter.xml in your, I forget what it's called, meta INF, I believe. Yeah, meta INF. So it will respect those, so I'm telling it, hey, don't go publishing node modules to my AEM instance. It doesn't want all those zips. So we'll leave that. And then another thing is we'll put in VLT ignore. So let's go into Etsy, go into design, hug ranch, client, lib, site. So I look at this and I'm like, well, okay, Chris, you keep telling me that the archetype is really Adobe's way of giving you best practices, but they just dumped in the JS and the CSS all into one folder. That doesn't seem that smart. So again, it's one of those things where you have to look at, your preferences against what Adobe's telling us. Did they do this for simplicity's sake, or do they think this is a really good idea? I'm going to go with they put CSS and JS in the same folder for simplicity. One other piece we're going to do is in Hug Ranch, we will do a new file called .vltignore. Okay, we're not going to do that. Oh, there we go. Didn't like my return. So we will just VLT ignore this. Go file. So we want to put that in client. Yep, client select. So new file, VLT ignore. So we'll just drop these in. Again, VLT ignore has the same syntax as git ignore. Again, this is very helpful to prevent or to help prevent brackets from trying to sync over a bunch of stuff that you don't want it to, like all your build systems, whether you're using Gulp, Grunt, any of those. Because you're really trying to eliminate, yes, you can use Maven to automate all of this. You can have Maven tie into Gulp, Grunt, really anything. But for a front-end dev that doesn't want to have to constantly Maven build all this stuff, this is what we're doing. That's why we're doing it. Okay. So I'm going to quit brackets just so it doesn't, just in case. We'll save hello world. And we're going to install Gulp and SAS. So let's just go into CD sites, AEM, Meetup, Hug, Ranch, UI apps, source, main, content, GCR groups, C, Hug Ranch, client, lib, sites. There's our stuff. Just do an LL. There's our VLT ignore. There's all our stuff. So we'll just quickly install these node modules. Because this is the front end world we live in. Everything's grunt this, gulp that, npm this. All right. So now what we can do. So we're gonna clean this up a little bit. So if we go into our site, we're going to do a couple things. So we're going to go into Etsy, Signs, Hug Ranch, Client, Lib, Sites. So we'll just say CSS, SCSS, and we'll just leave those for now. Okay. And then we're going to do a new Gulp file. So vim gulp file.js. Hopefully it's self-explanatory. We're just assigning a couple variables. This is really a very basic Gulp file if you're not familiar. It's a lot like Grunt. So we'll just write and save. And we will hit Gulp, and it'll start watching our folders for us. Okay. So now what we can do is go into Etsy, designs, Sandisk, client libs. Oops. Wrong folder. Open recent. Should be in here. There we go. etc, designs, plug ranch, client site. So let's do a new file called style.css. Okay. And if we look at style, so if we add a new file, I think we're going to pull in some of the CSS. So the very minimal CSS that they have here is totally compatible with SAS. So we'll just add these. I'll hit save. We can see that our build process is not continuing. Okay. So our Gulp process just generated a nice little style.css for us and the CSS map for us. Okay. So, you know, with SAS we can start to clean this stuff up. So we can actually say remove this. You can throw this in here. You know, and so we can start working a little bit more efficiently and more organized. So we have our SCSS folder and then we have our CSS folder. So we can save that. Again, our style will update. There's our source mapping URL. So now we have one more piece to change. So right now, our CSS.text for declaring our client libs is just referencing style.css. We don't want to do that. We want to reference there. So now we're pulling in the new CSS. Okay. So the one that we created from SAS and Gulp. So if we refresh, we'll see that, hey, nothing changed. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to debug our client libs. And oh, we need to open up brackets. So what we will do, I'm just going to put a carriage return in here. I'm going to put a carriage return in here. And look. Okay. So what we can see here is that because of our source map, we can start debugging right on top of our SAS. So we can, you know, we don't have to, where did this get compiled out to our CSS? So we just have debug client libs set to true. So we're looking at those actual files. Okay. So you can use brackets. So if you like Sublime, if you like Dreamweaver, you can use brackets as sort of the dumb pipe, and you can use, you know, you don't have to do it the AEM way or the Adobe way. You know, I love brackets, but there are some things where I'm just like, I wish you would work like Sublime. So I'll go in and do something in Sublime, and I'll just let brackets think it over. Okay. So that's it.
Awesome.
So Eclipse, it's great at debugging. It's got great Java support. The sync engine is, it's Eclipse only, so you can't use it as a dumb pipe like you can, I shouldn't say dumb pipe, but you can't use it like you can brackets. And it's full stack development. It doesn't have slightly auto-completion yet, but it does work. Brackets, the sync engine is BYO IDE, so you can bring your own IDE. It supports HTML, CSS, JS, .content, XML. Those are officially supported. I've had some problems with .content XML depending on what it is. You get slightly auto-completion. Just make sure you close your curly braces. It does have a nice little lightweight build system. You know, you can easily just say, be on the phone with somebody and say, or a front-end dev, maybe they're a junior dev or something, and you can say, okay, install this SAS plugin, and here you can start running. So I've used that a ton. And then About Me, the last piece of About Me. I'm on GitHub and Twitter as the universal way. If you do find problems with that, if you do end up using the SVG, component and you find a problem with it, let me know. I will fix it. But I use it every day, so I'll probably find it. And then I wrote an open source CMS blog engine using Sightly and Sling. You can find information about it at slick.millar.org. This whole process of learning about AEM, I started a blog called Experience Manage, and I was like, well, this seems kind of weird that I'm writing an AEM blog in PHP. So I wrote Slick, and so Slick, it's sort of my baby, my fourth baby. Hugo, Rosie, great, Slick, okay. So yeah, if you're curious, like, I love it. I love, I've totally fallen in love with Sling. I think you can be highly productive with the default Sling servlet. You get, it's just like you send a post, you authenticate, you send a post to wherever you want some content, you get content, which is really nice. So yeah, and also the other thing is that Slick also supports Dispatcher, so you can run a dispatcher in front of it, which is great. My wife had to hear me talk and geek out about that on a trip down to San. So yeah, questions?
Awesome. Thank you very much.
So we went from Sling Models to Gulp. So that's,
And PubRanch will definitely be able
Yes,
to do
and
that.
pugranch.com is taken. Did you buy that?
no,
Bummer. I got all excited.